War seems simple, at least in theory. Peace is more complex, but there's a path from war to peace. So why doesn't it seem so simple in practice? Why don't we seem to follow the principles that lead to victory in war or secure the peace? Welcome to the Ancient Art of Modern Warfare. I'm Chris Mayer, retired U.S. Cavalry officer and at one time instructor for the U.S. Army's Command and General Staff College and the Naval War College. For almost 100 episodes, I and some of my guests have explained what we think every citizen should know about war, at least at the macro level, not tactics, techniques, and procedures, but the fundamental elements of nations or peoples at war that have been pretty much unchanged since Athens and Sparta. These elements include knowing what you want to achieve by the war before you start it, what is a just war and why is that important, and strategy as a balancing of ways, ends, and means. I drew from military theorists from the Athenian General Thucydides to U.S. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Colin Powell, with an emphasis on the writings of the Prussian General Karl von Clausewitz. In recent episodes, I examined considerations in transitioning from war to peace. However, when we look at the world around us to include our own military history, it seems that these concepts are apparently absent from the way the real world works in going to war, fighting the war, and transitioning to peace. As a result, wars seem to be inconclusive, with never-ending or broadening conflicts and unattainable peace. It was very difficult not to answer the question of why war and peace on paper seem so far removed from reality by saying it's because we're led by idiots. My friend and collaborator, Colonel Robert Waring, recently an instructor at the U.S. Army's War College, talked me out of that and helped me to develop a more productive approach. As it turns out, Karl von Clausewitz had a lot to say on this very topic. He drew up a model of what war should be, but then spent as much or more time describing why it does not and can never fully achieve its potential. The bottom line is that war is planned, fought, and concluded by human beings. As I've said before, war is fundamentally a human endeavor. Studying military history is useful because human nature is unchanging. And so, therefore, the fundamentals of war are also unchanging. The study of war reveals certain enduring features that remain consistent over the centuries. These features are not all that hard to discern. Clausewitz noted that everything looks simple in war, and the knowledge required to achieve victory in war doesn't look remarkable. The strategic options, he wrote, seem obvious. Yet real war rarely, if ever, turns out the way we expect. Sometimes things turn out better than we expected, as was the case in Operation Desert Storm. More often we fall short of expectations, and sometimes disastrously so. Clausewitz called this feature of war friction. Using an information technology analogy, this friction is not a bug, it's a feature. Friction is the summation of the effect of 1,000 things that, no matter how well you plan, forces things to come out differently than what you planned. Yes, Clausewitz really wrote that everything in war is really very simple, but that's only the first half of the sentence. The second half is that even the simplest thing is difficult. He wrote that those who have not experienced war firsthand cannot even begin to imagine all of these things, these sources of friction that grind and slow the military machine. I'll begin with people as a source of friction. I say again, war is a human endeavor. It is fought by flawed human beings for the purposes of other flawed human beings and the purpose of each individual who is fighting. Keep that in mind. Everyone has their own motivations, even in war. Despite an effective command, solid discipline, training, and spirit, these individual motivations will affect the ability of the military force to function efficiently. Even when we are trying our best to do the right thing, the right way, for the right reason, friction from these individual motivations will cause us to fall short of expectations. Every military unit contains hundreds of individual human beings, and a military force in battle contains hundreds of units, and friction in any one unit can impact the others. This combined force is directed by political leaders who are themselves flawed. Even the lowliest private can decide to do something other than what his leaders expect, which may have consequences that affect his entire unit and other units that depend on his unit doing what it is supposed to do and when to do it. This can potentially change the outcome of an entire battle. Think of the story For Want of a Nail, where the carelessness of a farrier results in a shoe to be thrown by a horse, with compounding effects causing a battle to be lost. This friction even exists in the best trained and equipped, most elite military forces under excellent leadership. Considering the human factor alone, it's amazing when any war is fought in anything like the most productive, efficient, and just manner to achieve the victory that was intended. But human factors is not the only source of friction. Now think of the butterfly effect, where a small change in one part of the world can have an enormous effect on another continent. Friction includes the countless minor incidents that accompany war. Some you can anticipate as possible or even likely. Others may be remote, caused by events far away from the battlefield, or so unlikely that you discount them until they happen. Weather continues to be unpredictable with unpredictable effects. Supply chain faults may not get everything a unit needs to have before the battle is upon it. This could delay the battle with complex consequences. Or the unit can go to battle anyway, not expecting to need the missing item or items, only to find that unexpected circumstances make those items indispensable. Food could be late, inadequate, or spoiled. There are some who say that Napoleon lost the Battle of Waterloo because he had stomach troubles that day. Maybe because of bad food. Clausewitz wrote that friction is the one thing that explains why war on paper is different than war in practice. It is why things never go according to plan. Planning, therefore, must anticipate friction-induced deviations. The commander must expect the unexpected, both good and ill. He or she must understand the potential for friction, its likely sources, and adapt to it. I used to tell my staff officers that if you don't have a plan, you don't have anything to deviate from. Now, the commander could just drive on and force the unit to drive through despite that friction. A strong-willed commander might even make that work. Once, maybe twice. But it's like driving on when the check engine light comes on your car. Sooner, rather than later, the friction will cause the machine to stop. When I was in Iraq, I printed out Clausewitz's chapter on friction and war in German and posted it by my desk. I didn't want anything to be lost in translation. Hardly a day went by when I did not stop to read it, saying to myself, "This is normal, we will work around it." So what does the concept of friction mean to you? For one, when you look at a military operation or movement towards peace, see if you can identify sources of friction that are keeping things from moving in the direction things are supposed to be moving. It could be a fun and enlightening exercise. Second, more importantly, don't be quick to think that a military operation is a failure or that parties are not committed to peace. It could be, as Clausewitz described it, that leaders at all levels are doing the best they can, but are moving through a resistant element that works against any forward progress. Friction is not the only thing that keeps war and peace from being what it should be. There are other factors that derive from it or cause additional friction. And I'll talk about some of these in the next episode.